Days went by, and Janet found that the beast was not as terrifying as she had first thought. Yes, he was still large and rough-looking, but he treated her kindly. He gave her a beautiful room with a warm fireplace and soft blankets to sleep on. The food was good too, plenty to eat, and it was always fresh. Janet had the freedom to explore the castle, which she did with great curiosity. She walked through many rooms and hallways, discovering treasures and old furniture that had been forgotten. There were beautiful paintings on the walls, old books on shelves, and even a secret garden hidden behind a tall stone wall. In this garden, the beast grew the most beautiful roses Janet had ever seen. The roses were as big as her hands, with petals that glistened like jewels. The beast would sometimes visit Janet in her room, bringing her fresh roses from the garden. He would sit with her and tell her stories about his life. Janet listened carefully. Slowly, she began to see a different side to the beast. He wasn't just the frightening man who had taken her father's flowers. He was a man who had been alone for a long time. He shared how he had been cursed by a cruel spell many years ago, turning him into what he was now. Janet felt sorry for the beast. She began to see that, despite his appearance, he had a kind heart. He was lonely and sad, but he never hurt her. He treated her with kindness and respect, and soon they became friends. The beast would often ask Janet to marry him, but Janet wasn't sure. She had only just met him, and though she liked him, she wasn't ready to make such a big decision. Every time the beast asked, Janet would smile and say, "I am not ready yet, but I'm happy to stay with you and learn more." Janet's heart grew fond of the beast, not for the way he looked, but for the kindness he showed. She realized that beauty isn't just about what someone looks like, but about how they treat others. One day, after many months, Janet began to feel homesick. She missed her family, especially her father. She had not seen them in so long, and she wanted to check on them to make sure they were okay. So she went to the beast and asked, "May I visit my family? I miss them very much." The beast thought for a moment and then nodded. "You may go," he said, "but you must promise to return. If you do not come back, I will be heartbroken." Janet promised that she would return and quickly made her way back to her family. She was excited to see them again, but also nervous about how things might have changed. When she arrived at her father's cottage, Rose was shocked to see her. "Janet, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice full of surprise. "I thought you were living with the beast. Why would you go back there?" Janet smiled and explained everything. "The beast is kind. He treated me well, and I am safe with him. He has never hurt me." But Rose did not understand. "You can't trust him," she cried. You shouldn't go back. Come back home and stay with us." Janet felt torn. She loved her family, but she also knew that the beast had been good to her. After a while, Janet agreed to stay for a little while longer, hoping it would make Rose happy. However, as the days passed, Janet began to feel uncomfortable. She saw that Rose was more concerned about herself than about Janet's happiness. Rose didn't care about the beast's kindness, and she was too focused on her own life. Janet missed the beast and the peace she had found at the castle. She realized that her time at home had come to an end, and she had to go back. When Janet returned to the castle, she found the beast lying on the floor, looking very sad. His eyes were full of worry. "You took too long," he said quietly. "I didn't think you would come back." Janet felt a rush of sadness. She rushed to his side and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you worry. I had to visit my family, but I promise I will never leave you again." The beast looked up at her with hope in his eyes. "Will you marry me now?" he asked, his voice trembling. Janet smiled softly, her heart full of love. "Yes, I will," she said. At that moment, a light filled the room. The beast's rough, scary appearance began to change. His face softened, and his features became more handsome. The curse was broken. "I was cursed," the beast explained, his voice now gentle. "I was not always like this. But your kindness, Janet, has broken the spell." Janet smiled. "I always knew you were kind, even when you looked different." And with that, the beast turned into a man, a kind and gentle man who was no longer alone. The beast, now a kind and handsome man, smiled at Janet. She had been the one to break his curse with her kindness, love, and understanding. The man who had once looked frightening now stood before her, full of warmth and gentleness. Word quickly spread through the village about their upcoming wedding. The villagers were curious and excited, not knowing what to expect. Many of them had heard of the beast's castle and were afraid to go near it. But now they saw that the man who had once been terrifying was actually kind and good-hearted. On the day of the wedding, the sun shone brightly. The village was full of joy, with flowers decorating the streets and music playing in the air. The people of the village gathered together, dressed in their best clothes, to celebrate Janet and her new husband. Rose was there too, though she still felt a little unsure. She had not fully understood Janet's choice at first, but now, as she saw her sister so happy, she began to realize how wrong she had been. She could see the love between Janet and the beast, and now the man who had once been the beast was smiling, standing proudly by Janet's side. Janet, wearing a beautiful white gown, looked radiant. Her golden hair shone in the sunlight, and her eyes sparkled with happiness. The wedding ceremony was simple, but full of love. The village gathered around them, clapping and cheering as Janet and her new husband exchanged vows. Rose, watching her sister, felt a little sad. She had always wanted the best things and had never understood Janet's way of thinking. But seeing her sister so happy, Rose finally understood what was truly important. She walked up to Janet and with a small smile said, "I'm sorry, Janet. I didn't understand before. I can see now that you made the right choice. I wish you both a happy life." Janet smiled and hugged Rose. "It's okay, Rose. We all make mistakes. I forgive you," she said. The wedding was a beautiful day, full of music, dancing, and laughter. The Beast, now a handsome man, and Janet danced together, surrounded by the love of their family and friends. The villagers who had once feared the Beast now saw him as a man who had been transformed by love. Years went by, and Janet and her husband lived happily in the castle. They ruled the village with kindness and love. Together, they taught the villagers how to work together and share, how to help one another, and how to be kind. The village, once quiet and full of fear, was now full of laughter, warmth, and happiness. The people worked together, planting gardens, building houses, and sharing their lives. They all looked up to Janet and her husband, who led them with great care. Janet and her husband had children of their own, and they raised them with the same love and kindness that had helped Janet and the Beast find happiness. They taught their children to always be kind, to help others, and to care for the world around them. As the years passed, Janet became known as a beloved queen. People spoke of her kindness and how she always helped those in need. She was gentle, wise, and full of love, and the villagers admired her for it. One day, as Janet sat in the garden with her husband, watching their children play, she looked back at everything that had happened. She thought of the hard days when they had lost everything, when the family had moved to the small cottage, and when she had faced the Beast. But now, looking at her family, she knew that all of those struggles had been worth it. "Look at how happy we are," Janet said, smiling at her husband. "I never thought we could have so much joy." Her husband smiled back, his eyes full of love. "We have everything we need, Janet, and it's all because of your kindness." Janet and her husband lived out the rest of their days in happiness. Their children grew up to be kind and caring, just like them. The village continued to thrive, filled with laughter and love. And Janet, always gentle and full of love, became known as a queen who cared for her people and her family with all her heart. And so, They all lived happily ever after, sharing love, kindness, and happiness wherever they went.